This is Grow by Design. Are you a business owner struggling with the direction of your company? Do you hesitate, wanting things to be perfect before you take action? Do you question your strength as a leader? If you answer yes to any of these questions, this is the show for you.
All right, everybody, we are back again, and I'm super excited for this one. Today we have Tyler Pedersen on. I'm butchering names already, sorry. He's from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I originally caught his information from a post about Ironman and really what are your kind of the way I saw it was how your kids view you and the things that you're accomplishing in life. And so Tyler he's got the Instagram of the Endurance Dad Life, which that's what really drew me to you originally. You've been doing triathlon since 2023. Another thing that I saw was awesome was that you bested your personal time by 60 minutes in just 3 months, and being completely obsessed with triathlon stuff now as well. I know how much work goes into making gains on any of this stuff, whether it be any of the specific sports, not just all three together. It wants to help other dads be badass dads. I think that's like one of the most admirable things in the world. Struggled with alcohol, which when you see these things, like seeing someone that's went through struggle and adversity and is sharing this kind of message, I always feel like that's so powerful. We corrected the days on the days sober. It's 648 days right before this started. That's something that's so awesome and so worthy of being proud of, that all this ties into being a badass dad. And then also pursuing a sub-5 Ironman, which that's coming up in, 24 days. And finally, when it comes to business and what he does, he's the COO of a metal roof company. And I know that keeping a company running and managing and helping that grow could be a lot. So you definitely, between family, between business, between triathlon, I can relate and I understand you got a lot on your plate. So Tyler, thank you so much for being here. Tell us anything I missed out on.
Yeah, Jacob. No, I think you hit it all. I think let's get started on this introduction a little bit. I think my background is, before this we were talking about like we're kind of both bigger dudes, right? Mm-hmm. Running in triathlons. I'm 192 pounds. You're like a little over 200, and like. So my background was, I played football in high school, went on to play college football, and was a big lifter, right? Yeah. So when you're playing college football, you're just lifting full time. You're eating as much as you can just to try to put on weight. I went into college at 165 pounds and graduated college at 195 pounds in 4 years, switched from a running back all the way to an outside linebacker. And so like I added some weight. And then, during that time when I graduated college in 2009, I just gave up fitness altogether because it was a job from high school into college. And so I did that. And so in my 20s, right, it was party animal central. I was the life of the party. That's what I wanted to do. I went through a divorce in my early 20s. So really negatively hit me, and I turned to alcohol for a lot of that, and really lost myself in fitness as well. I would go to the gym for 3 months, try it out, and then I would just give up, right? Yeah. And then I would try to do nutrition and then just give up as well. And so it wasn't until I met my wife and in my early 30s, hold on, I got a little kid coming.
It's totally good.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
It wasn't until like really met my wife. I was 29 at the time. And I still had a really bad relationship with alcohol, but found God, found Christ again. We did our vows in front of Christ, which was a lot different than my first marriage. And then really, I didn't leave the party scene. I was in a banking job. As banking and commercial bankers would go out and network a lot, and it would all revolve around alcohol. Yeah. And this society revolves everything around alcohol and how great it is, but it's a detriment to a lot of people's lives, and it was a detriment to mine. So this is all leading up to. I'm going to get there. It's all leading up to where I'm at now. But January 2023, I lost my father, 63 years old, to cancer. I was in the hospital with him for 2 weeks. Stayed sober through that time in the hospital because I had to be there because I was like pretty much the one to help everything out with his estate and do all this stuff. And so after that, turned back to alcohol. And it wasn't until like June of 2023, I looked at my wife and I just could see that she was just frustrated with me. I would go to the bars alone. I would drink outside of, being with my family. It was just not being a good leader. So I saw her just worried, and like, I never got an ultimatum, but I could just tell she was sick of it and just ready to be done. So I said, all right, I'm gonna give up alcohol straight up on like one last day. I gave it up June 2nd, 2023. And then ever since then, haven't looked back. And the reason for that is because I went and then turned to triathlon. I said, I'm going to go ahead and get fit. I'm going to show my kids what I can do. I don't know how to swim. I hated running. I loved cycling, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I fell in love with triathlon at the time, because it challenged me to do something new. And my first triathlon in September 2023, I failed to swim. I could only swim 130 yards, got brought in on the kayak. I finished the bike and run, but it showed my kids weren't even there. It was on my sixth, anniversary with my wife, and it was just a whole mess. And I felt disappointed and embarrassed at the time. But after that, I vowed that I would never fail to swim on a triathlon. I hired a coach. 8 months later, showed up at the starting line of the 70.3 and finished that in Chattanooga. So that's kind of where we are now. So that's kind of a big introduction on where I'm at and how we led to me being in triathlons now. So.
Okay, well, cool. Well, that's already, like, I've already wrote like 5 things down, exactly like I said I would before we kind of started. And, I was going a different direction on some of these other things, and we'll be able to circle into all of it. But I think just for the sake of someone being interested in doing a shorter distance triathlon, a longer, like an Ironman or a full, you said something that was the exact same for me. Like, I happen to be okay at swimming or cycling and running, but swimming I was terrified of, right? So I know that almost everybody or a ton of people feel that way when they get into this. So what was the piece that got you over the hump for swimming? Because I think that'd be super valuable for anyone.
Yeah, and I think, I only did 6 weeks of training up to my sprint triathlon, and I was only in the water for like 8 times.
Okay.
And it's all about just being comfortable in the water. Mm-hmm. So I always recommend telling people, like, you need to start 2 or 3 months in advance. If you're not a swimmer, even for a sprint triathlon, 3 months in advance is just start swimming and swim 3 times a week. And really record yourself when you're swimming and send it to someone that you know. And they will tell you, like, if what you're doing or what you can improve on. I think I've probably analyzed 10 people swim now from Instagram, just people like, hey, I need help with this. I'm like, send me a video. Within a couple minutes, I say, hey, you're doing this in your form. This is why you're running out of breath. Work on this drill. And then they go back and they said, I appreciate that. And they get better at it. And so I think it's putting in the yards in the pool or in the open water and being comfortable with that to then transfer into sprint. Now, I'm telling you, like right now, you're not going to be good in the water after 3 months. I'm going to tell you, you're going to still panic and be scared because, right, when you swim in a pool, you have at least my pool, right? What I found out is that you have a sense of safety in the pool because no matter what, you can touch the bottom. Mm-hmm. In my pool, I can touch the bottom on both ends. A lot of times you can't do that, and some pools you can, some pools you can't. But so I don't touch the bottoms when I turn and flip, just to kind of act like it's open water. But when you get into open water and you like get tired and you try to feel the bottom, you don't feel the bottom, you panic, mm-hmm. and it just causes a lot of distress. So a lot of times it's all a mental thing as well. And so I think affirmations are great. I'm a great swimmer. I can do all things through Christ. There's a lot of mantras that you can do and mentally prepare yourself to that, and then visualize what you can do, and then do a lot of open water swims. Mm-hmm. Like I would say a handful, 5 to 10 open water swims just to be comfortable in the water. And usually for the first one, I would do like an early season one or a late season one, because then you can use a wetsuit, and that should help out a lot better. So there's a couple things there that we can unpack, but I think it's time in the pool. You're only going to get better if you have time in the pool. Practice your open water swim and mentally focus and prepare yourself with mantras to do things. So.
Yeah. I think that those are all great, and that's all stuff that I was lucky that kind of as I was struggling through it, because it was a brutal struggle to swim. I got a lot of that advice along the way. And what you said, I just want to second that I think now I've been swimming for probably about a year. It took me this long, probably within the last month, to really start like enjoying swimming, because I hated swimming the whole time. And when you start actually getting enough speed to potentially be like closer to the people you're swimming with, they're in a master's group or whatever, or in a lane and you just don't feel like a fish out of water, it does. There's a long run there, but it does get more enjoyable as you go.
Yeah, and I want to talk. I want to hit on this. I'm glad you brought up the masters thing within like a YMCA or something like that. Like a lot of people think like when you get into triathlons, it's very expensive. You need the triathlon bike,
Yeah.
right, which can be upwards of $10,000.
Yeah.
Let's just say. You need all the fancy gear. You need all this stuff. You really don't. If you really trying the sport out, and that's why I want to hit on this because it's the financial part of it. Like if you're just doing a sprint triathlon, you could do it on a road bike. You can find someone on Facebook Marketplace, or you probably know someone who has a road
Yeah.
bike. Use the money that you would use into like a $1,000 triathlon bike
Yeah.
or $2,000 and hire a swim coach.
Yeah.
If your weakest discipline is swimming, hire a swim coach, and just that's what you should focus on: is
100%.
swimming, and three, 4 times. If you can't hire a coach, join a master's group at the YMCA. I think they're $30 a month.
Yeah.
Show up twice a week, and you get coaching out of it, and you swim with other people.
Yeah.
That's the biggest. I think that's a lot of people don't want to talk about that because they want to do one-on-one coaching. I don't care. Like I'm coaching some people right now. If you can't afford what I have, that's fine. But here's other options that I want to provide to people out there so they can get help and be successful. Because the more people that can come into triathlon and be successful from the start, the better it is for the sport. So that's all I'm going to try. So
For sure.
I think that's another number one thing as well, is like getting in the sport. You don't need the fancy bike. You don't need the fancy gear. Spend it on like the swimming lessons. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I did. I got a used, well, it was new in a box Trek that was a cheap domain, and he was selling it for way under the price just because he was wanting to get rid of it because he never even took it out of the box.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even $1,000 for the bike, you know. And I've still, even though now I've got a really nice, because I think that's a great point. Figure out you actually really like it before you go buy the expensive stuff. You know, because I just went and got a nice tri bike because now I know like I've got a really big goal this year. But I still have the Amazon helmet, like, because I'm still a tight ass. Like, the helmet's not going to speed me up as much as the bike, and that's where I'm going to get the gains from. You know, so yes, you're 100% right. I did the first big distance I did was the full when I did it on the road bike with Amazon aero bars that were pretty sketchy, you know, and yeah, you don't have to have the nicest stuff to do a lot of these, and especially when you get into the sprint distance stuff, which I think's super or shorter, any of the shorter distance stuff's a really fun starting point.
Yeah, and again, like sprint distances, you can find one locally within an hour or two drive, right? Usually in an Ironman 70.3, you're driving 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and it's you know, I think it's a good launch point, and you know, I use Facebook Marketplace a lot. I bought my tri bike for $950. It came with, you know, it was a 2013 model. I still use it today. I've got like probably total now. I've invested $2,300 total. That's everything with a bike fit, with upgraded cranks, with upgraded aero bars, and you know, slowly upgrade as you know that you're gonna enjoy and like the sport, and get into it. And I think that's a good key lesson for people getting into the sport. So.
For sure. Well, let's, and I know we'll probably get into more of it because we're talking about it just in a different way. Talk a little bit about how triathlon how you've kind of used this to help you stay sober and kind of better on that end of things.
Yeah. So like, you know, I would drink alcohol to get rid of my problems or to escape a lot of things in reality, to be completely honest. And so like, to hold myself accountable, I had to find something that I needed to wake up every day and be on point for. That might sound like pretty weird to people, or like not direction for people, because like, oh, you can wake up for your family, you wake up for this, you wake up for your job, but like at the end of the day, some people just struggle in general. And so I needed to have something to wake up for and stay sober for, and that was essentially triathlon. I knew like if I was going to start doing this, working out, cycling, biking, or cycling, running, and swimming, I couldn't be hungover. I couldn't stay up late. I had to get to sleep. So like that for me was to hold myself accountable. So, you know, it's helped me stay completely sober, and it really, um, you know, without that, I probably would have relapsed and went back to drinking or found an excuse to do it. Like, there's some hard days at work that I'm like, man, I would just sit here and have a beer, but then I got to go train for an hour and a half to 2 hours on the bike,
Yeah.
you know. And so, like, when you have a really rough day at work, and you put your kids to bed, and then at night you're like, man, I got to go ride for 2 hours. In that 2 hours, it's actually more of a healing process,
Mhm.
I think. Whereas like you're pushing yourself, you're pushing your body, and at the end of the day, you're like, man, I'm glad I did that workout versus skipping it. And so, you know, it's just changed my outlook on waking up every morning to do something better. So
I love that. And yeah, any of those workouts, like even like a long, I've noticed like I don't do a lot of like just long, consistent distance swims in a pool, but when I do them, I didn't know how therapeutic some of this stuff is. Like I've had where I swim like a mile and then do it just straight and I'm in a pool. I'm literally, and because I always swim really early morning if I do, I can literally plan and lay out my whole day and deal with problems just in that swim because it becomes so automatic that like you actually get to work through some of those things. And then same like you said,
yep,
instead of needing to you know, drink a beer to kind of unwind, I can just go. Or if I'm stressed during the work days, a lot of times I'll do a run like as for a lunch instead of a lunch. And I mean, man, it's pretty hard to be that you have all that stress after a tempo run. You know, after you really go hammer your brains out. So
yeah,
I found a lot of that in the same way as like there's purpose, one, from it. And then two, it's just like a huge outlet. I actually, you know, I know we're going to get into that, you know, like using this to become a better example and dad in general. I've even started running with my 7 and 9 year old. We do like a mile lap around the house. And one of them is always kind of like anxious about stuff or gets stressed out a little easier. I'm like, hey, you know, like run and let's talk and hang out and kind of use that as an outlet because everybody needs an outlet for these things.
yep, yep. I agree 100% with that. So, yeah, and again, it's trickled down to the family thing, right?
Yeah.
So, my wife is training for a half marathon in Indy in May.
Okay.
She used to be running, like she used to run. She's never ran a half marathon or marathon, but she's like, hey, I want to do something now. So she's running for a half marathon. My oldest, who's 5, she turns 6 in October. There's a youth triathlon up, you know, an hour away. She wants to do that in August. So and this might be a good transition into family stuff, but it's like your kids are watching what you do,
Hmm.
right? And so like when I was sitting there drinking beer, like they were watching me do that and like just be silly and make fun of myself. But now they're seeing me training and do all this stuff to where it's like now they want to do better, and it just trickles down to everyone that's seeing you, right? And so I've lost some friends along the way
Yeah.
because of my circles become very, very small because I don't drink.
Yeah.
And the current friends that I have, they're okay with that. They don't push me into anything, and you know I still go out and we have fun and we hang out, and I drink, you know, hop waters or NA beers
Yeah.
or water. Like and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, I just want to make sure like people understand like your kids do watch what you're doing in any action that you do, and it's brought a better family life as well for me. So
That's, yeah. I mean, I don't remember who said it, and I don't know if it was on a podcast or maybe it was people in a conversation, but just that whole thing of what you just said. Little eyes are always watching. You know, make sure they're watching something good. And
yeah,
that's the same deal. It's like we could be anything, right? You could be exceptional. You could be not doing anything at all. And when you've got kids, it just seems so much more important. One, to be as healthy as possible, to be as energetic and there for them as long as possible. But two, to set that example because, like you mentioned this before. I think we even got on and started recording, how you kind of can get lost in that and you're just a father and you're for all this. And so it is nice to have this thing on the side, but you are also like, you know, my view of caring about someone, loving family, whatever, is putting other people before you a lot of times. And like in that situation, not consciously thinking about how I am affecting them with the things I do and what my example, like I say that to my boys all the time. I'm like, hey, we're examples, right? Like this is important.
yep,
What you do is an example of what is right, so be a good example. So yeah, that's so cool. I mean, just see that your wife's getting involved in that. Your kid. How old is your the kid that's going to be doing the youth triathlon?
She's 5, and
That's
it's
awesome.
cool because it's like a 0.25, like, oh no, it's a 25-yard swim. It's like a mile, like, I don't know how long the bike is. I think it's like maybe a half-mile bike or a mile bike and like a mile run or something. It's like super short, but
Okay.
it's like something that she wants to do. And so, and I, you know, and that's the thing about like why I created like Endurance Dad Life, the community, because a lot of people, when you have kids, it's like, I'm living, my kids are the number one thing in my life, and I'm doing this for my kids and whatever. It's like, but people don't set themselves, they lose themselves on an identity thing. They just say, hey, I'm a parent anymore, and I'm doing everything for my kids. I'm working for my kids. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm
Yeah.
doing, it's like, okay, but are you living for your kids and showing them what's possible? And like, do you have your own personal goals you're still living for? I love that.
Yeah.
I still support my kids. I still that, but I still have my own agenda that I want to do. And people will say, "Oh, that's selfish." I'm like, "No, that's not selfish. That's just me being the human being and the leader that I want to be, and show my kids that we can still be badasses and be fathers and be the working class, and we have hobbies." And I think that's the most important things in this society right now is that with a lot of people just sitting inside or playing video games or you know whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
it's like people doing the extra work, like working a full time job, being a father, training for triathlons, whatever you want to do. Like, I think that people need to be told, like, it's okay to be selfish and go for that hour run or 2 hour run and spend some time with yourself in those moments because then you get better
Yeah.
and you can be a better parent. And that's why you do the things is so you can show up and be better every day for your kids.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like I feel like, and I felt this way before I did this. I was big into. I've been a motocross rider and racer forever, and always had some kind of outlet,
Yeah.
right? And I just get hurt too often riding dirt bikes. But no matter what, like having that outlet has always shown me like even if I'm spending time with it, I'm always I feel like I'm a better dad, a better husband when I've got that thing. And I fell in love with I think the biggest thing that I love about what I'm doing now is dirt bikes. Like if I was going to go load up and not everybody enjoys that in my family for a weekend, like just to go ride and practice, it was going to be, from early in the morning till at least 1 in the afternoon before I showed back up. What I have really found out I love about what we both do is I can train twice most times and affect no one. I can do it in the early
Yep.
morning while none of my family is awake. I can do one midday or, like you said, late in the day, and no one even knows. And typically I do mine at early morning and lunch or on a Saturday and Sunday. I'm done before anybody even gets out of bed. And, I've already got that time in, and then I still get to go back in and do those things. And I feel much better for it as not just selfishly for me, but as a father and husband. So.
Yep. I agree 100% with that. So.
Okay, so with all this kind of progressing, you mentioned, you're wanting to build, and I heard you hit on coaching and helping people. Tell me a little bit about the community of men, like what you're wanting to build as far as that, and kind of like in the fitness business niche.
Yeah, so when I got in triathlon, I didn't really know any direction, right? I couldn't find any resources. I went on YouTube a lot, and I tried to learn how to swim off videos from there,
Yeah,
and I just didn't really feel like there was much direction. I didn't know who to reach out to be completely honest. I'm completely new. So what I want to do is build a community of dads who want to be badass leaders in their family and complete an endurance race. I'm not looking for the person who's trying to break a sub 5 iron, half Ironman or break a 3 hour marathon or anything like that. That's top level stuff. I want to be in the business of coaching people to their first endurance race, whether that's a half marathon, a 5K, anything like that, and show them that it's possible to complete their goal. You look at the biggest problem I see with people when they start this is like, I want to have this time goal, and people are like, I want to do this for this time, and like, what? That I was like that. I was like, I wanted to break
yeah,
a sub 5 last year. I thought I was going to do it, and it was like it humbled me a lot.
yeah,
At the end of the day, it's like your first race is your personal best. Like that's something that you can accomplish. And you're doing something that only 5% of the world's even doing
yeah,
right now, and so like that's something to be proud of and to show. So like, I want to develop a community where people can come ask questions, and I can share my experiences with people. I tell people all the time, like, you can ask me anything on Instagram and I'll reply to any DM, and it's getting to be a lot. So that's where I'm like, I want to build a community where I can just help people from the beginning of the journey to the end and be realistic on the training and be realistic on the goals and really humble people from the beginning to say it's going to be a lot of work. And that's where I want to come in to help you out. And like, it's crazy because like you have anywhere from $250 to $700-800 on monthly coaching, and it's just so expensive. It's like you ask people to come in this sport of triathlon even, and you're asking them to buy a bike, you're asking them to buy, you know, running shoes and all this stuff, and then coaching. It's like it gets to be a lot, to where it can financially burden people. So that's where I want to try to help people out, is like be cost effective on the coaching and help people from the start and like do it that way. And I'm trying to find a guinea pig of someone who only has 5 to 7 hours a week to train on a half Ironman, to train them and see if that I can get a program in place for that kind of program, just to get to the finish line of an Ironman 70.3. You're not going to be competitive, only training 5 to 7 hours a week, but I think I can get you there. So like that's the stuff that I'm really working on to focus on for some people who are really, really tight on their timeline on training, is to develop programs like that can be effective for people to do that. So that's really what I'm looking at. It's like, so it'd be, you know, the business type of thing. It'd be merchandise. I'm actually looking at hats right now. You know, people that are proud to wear an endurance dad life would be someone who's like, hey, this transformed me into an original dad, into a badass dad. I finished my first race. That's the community I'm in. And it's a group of men that can come and say, hey, I'm having problems with, you know, my kids, or I'm emotionally unstable right now because the training's a lot and I need someone to talk to and an outlet to reach out to. So, you know, think about like a Patreon or school type community where people can come in and be 100% vulnerable in that community, and really reach out to people as well. And then a lot of resources for, you know, nutrition, strength and conditioning, mental items as well. And then the coaching stuff, one-on-one coaching. Those are the type of things I'm looking at to begin with. So
I love that, and yeah, I feel like that time block is really good for a half. I mean, you can still accomplish a lot in that, and giving people realistic expectations. It took me a lot of work before. At first, it was just finish an Ironman, you know. And before I got there, though, I saw the progress I made, and I had a coach. And I realized that I started getting to a goal because I saw that stuff was coming together. But you hit the nail on the head with, like, you need a lot of data and you need a lot of information before you can even start thinking about, I want to go and do this and do it in this time. No matter what, you said it best, no matter what, it's your PR. So finishing's the first goal. Yeah. Once you either one, get over the hump and you actually finish it, or two, you get to a point in training where you're like, okay, all these times are progressing so much that I can see maybe I've got some kind of realistic goal that could be made, but it's silly to try to start with a goal.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, that's the thing about social media. I mean, I know you found me on Instagram and stuff like that, but like a lot of these people in social media, a lot of people that you see, it's like people who have no kids. They're in their mid to late 20s. They have no kids. They're for some reason they can train all freaking day. You know, 20, 30 hours a day, or 20, 30 hours a week. And like, I'm just like, that's not realistic for like a parent.
Yeah.
Like that is not realistic. And like, I want to show people like, it's hard to do this. It is hard to train. I don't care. It's not a Hollywood movie that it's so like I love training. Yeah. It's like, this 3-hour bike ride, I'm enjoying every second of it. No, it sucks sometimes getting on there and sitting on the saddle for 3 hours, and it's grueling and it sucks. And it's mentally tiring and your legs are going to hurt. And it's at the end of the day though, like you're mentally pushing yourself to the brink. And those moments you'll remember during the race, be like, man, that's what this 3-hour ride was for. So I can get over the hump on this. My legs are tired, but I know I can push through it. Like, and that's the thing that I want people to understand. Like the training sucks. The training is hard, especially if you haven't been in fitness for a while. you're going to get really discouraging when I tell you to go run a 12-minute mile. And you're like, it's going to be humbling. It's a very humbling thing for people when they get into this. But it's so rewarding if you stick to it.
Yeah,
that's all.
And here again, like I just this resounding. Like I agree so much, and I think another thing that can be disheartening that I feel like that part what you said about the running a 12-minute mile. Just even seeing people, like that's the thing I have the most time in away from the transition, away from riding dirt bikes, is I've been running for, I don't know, I guess probably since early 23, I really started getting into running. And I really started like wanting to do like halves and I did my first marathon at the beginning of last year. And I was out on a run with a friend early morning before meeting last Thursday. And we were kind of like joking about the pace we were running on, what was an easy run to us now. And I think people, like you get on Instagram or you get on anything and you see people and you see their paces and it's like this comparison thing. Like it takes so much time to build a base to where you can drive your pace down and your heart's not just exploding trying to do it. And then so you see someone that can run even a 10-minute without their heart jumping up, or 9-minute average, or 8, or whatever that number is. And I feel like that, and every little piece is that way. Swimming, like this, being able to swim 25 yards without feeling like you're going to die, that's a real thing.
Yep.
And everybody that's got a lot of time in makes it look super freaking easy. So that makes the whole thing even harder.
Yeah, and that was a lot of my stuff on Instagram. If you scroll through my page, there's a lot of value in there that I tell people. Like I started from like not even I failed this my first swim on my triathlon, and like it was hard for me to breathe for 25 yards. And now in the last 4 months I've clocked over 136,000 yards in the pool. I mean, that's a lot of yards. I'm averaging 30,000 yards a month in the pool. And a lot of people are like, I didn't even train that much for my full Ironman. Why are you putting in so many yards? I'm like, because that's my biggest weakness. And right now is the time to bank up that swimming to get me through the rest of the year. And like, I don't think a lot of people understand like how much you need. And so like, and from the start, like back in August 23, I ran a 5K in like 28 minutes. My 5K now time is like 20:30. And so I've taken like 7.5 minutes off that in a year and a half. And like I started swimming, it was like 2:15, 2:20. I'm at a 1:40 pace. And then my cycling output, I was at 216 FTP watts, and now I'm at 270 FTP. So like it takes a lot of time, but if you stick with it, you're going to see the results.
Yep. Yeah. And just know that, it's a slow build, and there's no way to race there. You've got to just put in the time. I saw that on your Instagram. You've got to just clock slow, easy miles. You can't go just, hey, I'm going to just run my brains out and get faster. There's a lot of base that's zone 2. And then, you can do speed work on top of that to get your efficiency better. But it's not just run as fast as you can, as long as you can, and you'll get better. So
yeah, and here the advice I'll give if you have any new triathlon people listening, in the future, it's like, here's how you schedule a week, right? You have 2 really high intensity workouts in different disciplines, right? You have a good speed work, let's say you do an interval workout in the pool to try to get faster and get that heart rate up, that VO2 max up, right? And then you 3 days later you do a interval FTP, interval bike session in zone 4 and zone 5, right? Everything else in that week should be zone 1, zone 2 to build that aerobic base, because you think about it, you only need 24 hours of recovery, not even that, from a zone 1, zone 2, because that's like zone 1 is active recovery, zone 2 is where you really build your base. And when you're racing in like an Ironman setting, you're only really getting to your zone 3 mid-zone, or zone 2 mid-zone 3. You're not getting the zone 4, zone 5s at all. So that's really why you should be training a lot in the zone 2 range, is to build that base. So like that's some free advice for people, like 2 intense workouts during the week, and then everything else zone 2 to zone 1, and you'll start seeing it progress pretty quickly.
Heck yeah. What when you talk about the zones, because I know this is something I've always, you look and you find so much information. Have you actually done like a max heart rate test, or are you just basing that off of, the standard like math of this minus this number minus your age?
Yeah, so what I do is I base all of my, and I have a coach myself,
Yep.
so I'm not like telling people that. So what we do is we base everything off threshold heart rate
Hmm.
and not max heart
Okay.
rate, because a lot of people don't understand threshold versus
Hmm.
max. And so like threshold heart rate is the max heart rate that you can that you can keep clearing lactate out of your body.
Hmm.
And I don't want to get super
Yeah.
specific, but like that's the big thing is that you want to go off threshold heart rate and you want to set your zones based off threshold heart rate. So like usually it's like zone 1 to zone 5,
Hmm.
and 5 is going to be your max heart rates, your max threshold that you can do, and then your zone 1 and zone through zone 4 is going to be whatever breakdowns like 59% or 70% or however the breakdown is. I don't know off
Yeah.
the top of my head.
Yeah.
um, but like for me in my how I train off pace and not heart rate.
Okay.
So I set my zones off of my paces, and then I monitor how efficient I'm getting based on what my heart rate's doing.
Okay.
Does that make
It
sense?
does. It does. I
Okay, so that's why I tell people to always do like a 5K test, an FTP test, and a swim test. Get your time, like your max time that you can do, and those are max effort,
Mhm.
right? And then set your zones off the time on that. Still monitor your heart rate zones as well in that. But then I always tell people like if the zone 2 run, go on a zone 2 pace, not the heart rate. Your heart rate might jump up to maybe a zone 3, but it's going to come down. The more you do it, it's going to be more efficient, and you're going to get into the zone. So
100%. And so I live in just one other little piece of information around this, all this heart rate and pace thing. I live in, and it's going to be the same in every area, but Florida, we've got real hot summers, right? And right now it's
yeah,
super, it's a little cooler. And this is going to be the same if I was still in Illinois or Indiana or any of them. Um, Heat can be very demoralizing as well because your paces
yeah,
and your heart rate it just drastically change based on if it's 85 or it's 60 degrees. So there's so many variables in all of this when you're not just in the water and you're biking and you're running as well.
yeah, 100%. I was actually going to pull up how much stress. How much stress you actually do on heat, and I think it's like 10% performance on heat. Like you're gonna be 10% less. You're gonna perform 10% worse if you do like a hotter race than like a cooler race or something like that. I don't remember the numbers on that, but I was trying to pull that up real quick. But yeah, and that's why that's a good point because like I've got a race coming up in Texas. I'm in Indiana. I haven't been able to run outside or like get heat acclimated. So I've been doing sauna
Yep.
sessions 3 4 times a week, 30 40 minutes. A lot of people are like that doesn't work. I'm like I'm gonna prove you all wrong because like science proves it works. A lot of people are like, well, that doesn't work, but let's see what science says. I love what science says.
Yeah.
And then I just started now biking with like layers on.
Okay.
A cool guy to follow is David Roach, R O
Oh.
C H ROCHE. He's out of Colorado. He's our age. He's like 36, I believe.
Hmm.
I'm 38, and but he's got 2 kids. But if you don't know him, he set the course record for the Leadville 100 last year after like 15 years. His first time showing up, but he does a lot of heat acclimation on layers,
Hmm.
and he will do a lot of layers of sweatshirts and things like that. And so that's what I've been doing as well. I started biking on just layers like a zone 1, zone 2 bike, right?
Yeah.
Don't do a heat acclimation in zone 4 and zone 5. You're going to kill
Yeah.
yourself. I would do zone 1, zone 2 heat acclimation and just start building up the sweat and stuff if you have a race like that coming up. So we'll see in a couple of weeks how it turns out. So
One, yeah, David, and correct me if I'm wrong, before people even look into him, that record was 6:52 minutes. It was a 6:52 pace, wasn't it?
I don't know what it was. I mean,
It
I
was
don't have that
stupid.
data. I know
It
it
was
was stupid
stupid.
fast. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, it was incredible.
ridiculous.
I think it was that long for 100 miles, which is one, totally insane. And then two, anything heat acclimation is if you can gain heat acclimation, it is awesome because so I'm in Florida and most of my training is going to be in boiling hot. Like I actually try to use it to my advantage. Even if it is a harder session, I'll still do like mid I'll do noon or 1 o'clock runs just because I know, okay, one, I'm always out in it anyway. Two, the opportunity to get that stress and be used to it is advantageous, because then when I went and did the California Full in Sacramento, I'm going on the bike and I'm seeing all these people like just dripping sweat. When I get out of the water, I'm freezing, I couldn't even get my gloves on. I froze for the first 5 miles, and all the way through that bike ride, I see people just pouring off sweat, and I'm not even sweating. So that heat acclimation, if you can gain those little things that are going to make it a little bit easier, those little tricks. You said a key earlier too. If you're not as experienced, get in a place where you're going to have cold water and you're going to be able to have a wetsuit, because it's like a life raft, which I never got that. Dude, you just can't sink with one on. All these little pieces that make it easier or make you do better, because any of those events, half, full, even if it's a sprint starting off, it's a lot. There's a lot going on there. And to be able to make it through that as easy as possible with as many advantages to make that as easy as possible, I feel like is your best shot.
Yeah, and another thing is like I don't train with fans either. Like I'm in my basement. I have zero fans blowing on me because I want the heat. I want to be more efficient in that. And yeah, I think that's another thing that people don't realize. And I didn't realize until I showed up at Chattanooga last year, my first half, and in May it's 85, or was it? It was 85 degrees and 95% humidity.
Oh yeah,
it was awful.
Oh yeah, and
it ruined my run.
I don't even really know why the fans thing. I feel like you want all the stressors, right? Like I see everybody use a fan. I'm like, wow. Like simulating the feel of wind on me that's not actually slowing me down on a bike and screwing up my aero speed or my aero advantage is irrelevant. All it's doing is cooling me off and making me work less. Like I'd rather get more work in a shorter amount of time, and that be one of those little advantages. Okay, well, kind of final piece, and I had this on my notes as well. Speak a little bit about, you had mentioned to me that you've already got this full plate, right? You've got work, you've got kids, you've got triathlon, you've got all these different responsibilities. And you did mention on top of that, you do have a child that's got you said a rare genetic disease?
Yeah, so we've got two daughters, a 5 and a 3-year-old, and a 3-year-old, her name's Sloan, and she was born, and we didn't know this for probably about a year into her age, that she just was crying a lot, and just needed cuddled all the time, and it was sleepless nights. My wife and I, we laugh about it because we don't remember the first 8 months of her life, because it was a lot of just late nights and things. So we ended up going to Nationwide Children's Hospital down in Columbus, Ohio. Got a genetic test done. We find out that she has this rare genetic disease called Williams syndrome. Just a little bit about that is that it's a little bit like Down syndrome, whereas Down syndrome it's a deletion of let's see here, sorry, it's an addition of a chromosome, whereas with Williams syndrome, it's a deletion of a certain gene on a certain chromosome. Okay. So we're all born with elastin in our bodies. Our skin is elastic. Our heart has elastin in it. These kids with Williams syndrome don't have any elastin in their bodies, so they have a lot of heart problems. They have a lot of facial feature problems. They have a lot of just development issues in the long term. So we have spent multiple times down at Nationwide Children's Hospital, but the stressors of making sure that she's going to be okay for the rest of her life, and my wife and I, we have accepted that we might have a child living with us full time for the rest of our lives. It's like, sometimes it's you count down the summers of when your kid's going to be 18 and they're out of the house. Yeah. It's like, and then on the other end, it's like, man, you only have 18 summers with them, but now it's like we have a child now that we might have to live with, or have to live with us the rest of our lives. So it's like having to accept that into lives. I'm an open book. I sat there and kind of mourned this of my child, like, hey, this is selfish. It's like, I'm going to have this child with me the rest of my life. And it's like, God brought me back to, it's like, hey, I brought this child to you for a reason. And she brings so much joy to people in everyone's in their lives. Mm-hmm. Like, she will light up a room with just how she acts. And it's like, she's been such a joy. And so but it was just a stressor for us for so much time. And a lot of people don't understand what the disease is. And it's it's just the stressors of that. I mean, going to the doctors and, my wife having to stay home with her. Like, we can't have a dual income right now because, she's got to be with her all the time. It's just, there's a lot of life changes that had to happen to work with her. So,
yeah. Well, one, that's super, any of these things that add just to the stress of life in general are really inspiring just to see because everybody looks at around like, oh, nobody's got it worse than me, and there's always a situation that's worse, and you're seeing that. And I love you tying in the kind of praying about it and looking towards faith in that, because I'm a real big advocate of, it's said, you're not given anything that you can't handle, more. And I think that's something like when I relate to business stress, personal stress, life stress, I always kind of remember that. I'm like, hey, it's quite the test here. I know I'm not giving anything more than I can handle, but we're pushing it. But to just hear that and hear you be an open book about that, and just, it's so inspiring to hear, and to hear like that. I kind of got the twinkle, and it's hard because I got to look at the camera to look like I'm looking at stuff and not watch you, but I can still kind of catch the twinkle in your eye of you saying your daughter lights up the room, and that's just, dude, that's freaking awesome.
Well, yeah, and that's like, I look at my life the past 2 years, I would say even 3 years, right? And it's like, we got a kid who was rare genetic, born with a rare genetic disease.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my father.
Yep.
I quit alcohol. I changed jobs. Like, there's been a lot of life that's happened in like 3 years, like good, bad, ugly. But like, I wouldn't change it for the world. Now, like, I'm now like looking at like, how can I help other people who think it's like, man, losing a parent, or I've got a kid that has this, something wrong with them, or I'm struggling with quitting alcohol. How can I use that to help other people? That's what I want to do. And that's why I told you, like, that's why I want to do a podcast. Like, that's why I want to tell, I'm not here saying like, hey, look at me. It's like, hey, if you're in a situation where I was in the deep, darkest times, there's a way out. And like, it's just I hate to see people get depressed about where they're at with life. If they can reach out to someone and be a lifeline and talk to some people, like, that's what I want to do to help people and just talk to them. That's really why I do this stuff. So
yeah, I write down on my goals. I rewrite my goals every day, right? And one piece of that is I always put, I inspire everyone around me in the world. And I think what you're doing right there is huge, because inspiring people is cool, and I love the training and sharing those things, because I know that a lot of people see that, and somebody's seeing that, it's like, damn, dude, I want to push for that time. Somebody's seeing that, it's like, damn, I want to stop being on the couch. I need to actually do something. Yeah. But that sharing, you kind of said, like, sharing hope. I think that's also so. It's a part of inspiration as well, but sharing that hope, that because people get in this thing of like total despair. And along with that comes what you dealt with: alcohol, massive depression, like suicide, all of these things that, maybe if someone was just there to just reach out and say, hey, this is something you can do. This can give you some, I know that you're going to agree with this, but like, to me, and from everything I've seen with people that are suffering the most, it's usually, not all the time, but most of the time, I feel like you can almost pin it on someone that is really struggling to find their purpose. Why am I here? Why am I doing it? Like, all this reasons where they just don't have any purpose, any faith in anything. And being able to kind of share that with people, and then share, like, you've got this huge stack of things, these cards kind of leaned against you in certain areas. Man, that's freaking awesome, dude. That's awesome. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, like, there's hope in everything you do. Mm-hmm. Don't suffer to lose, suffer to win, and suffer for the right reasons. So
for sure. Well, dude, Tyler, I could go on for hours. Thank you so much for coming on here today, and here again, like I said, we could just get off in the weeds talking about the triathlon and all of the stuff I know.
Yeah.
But where so more people can connect with you. What are some of the best ways to connect with you, to reach out, and to get in touch?
Yeah, just my Instagram's the best way. I
Okay.
mean, that's endurance dad life. Follow me there. Shoot me a DM. I respond to all DMs. And if it's too long, I usually send a voice message.
Okay.
I think that's the best way to do it and connecting with people. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, if anyone wants to reach out on anything, alcoholism, training, endurance, life, just need a helping hand, just to vent, like just shoot me a message.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great. And then, yeah, you're also looking for the guinea pig on the half Ironman as well. So if anybody else
Yeah,
has
the
that,
5 to 7 hour person. Yeah. That and no, I mean, I'm not going to charge anyone for it. It's just a testimonial. I'm just need to find a guinea pig who needs who has a short amount of time, and we got to work on that. So yeah.
what are the just so if someone's listening to this and they kind of know what do they need to have, like, as far as, like, if you're working with them, are they going to be using like a Garmin Training Peaks kind of setup? Do they at least need that, or are you just handwritten kind of deal? What?
Yeah, no, I do require a couple things for coaching. I found out that the most effective things are you need a watch, you need heart rate monitor, and then I always say like a power meter for your bike outside,
Yep.
or an indoor trainer.
Okay.
Those are the three requirements that I do because in my opinion, to be effective, you need to understand your power output on the bike, and then you need to also monitor your heart rate and paces on the run and like the swim stuff. So those are and then just some of the swim equipment as well. Like the swim equipment's like $100. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
more
you're looking at
affordable
a
into
little
the
bit to
deal.
get started with. Yeah, but in my opinion, I mean, Facebook Marketplace is the best thing. Like I bought one other thing, and it's like I bought my bike trainer off Facebook Marketplace for $250. Like, and it still works.
Okay.
Like, that's the thing is like people don't get it. Like you don't have to spend the $600 to $800 or $1,000 in retail. Like
Oh, yeah.
buy it for 75% off.
There are a huge set of people that bought all the fancy nice stuff that weren't actually going to be long term into it, and then got rid of it for pennies on the dollar. So awesome.
Exactly.
Well, Tyler, again, thank you so much for coming today. This has been a great talking over all of this and going through this. I appreciate your inspirational attitude, kind of the mission that you're on to do this, and thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. And we got to see the sunrise behind me. So that was cool.
Perfect, man. Great morning. Talk soon, dude.